Hey guys, so I wanted to touch upon a topic that new SQL developers sometimes find a little confusing, and it can trip up experienced SQL developers too, but typically they've got enough experience to recover from this. So this topic is around the order of execution in a SQL query. It's important to understand in any SQL which clause gets executed in which section. So I'll demonstrate this to you by writing some SQL that I've got ready. That I don't have ready, but I have a database. I'm using a Postgres database server. Um, and I have a few tables already loaded. I was playing around with tennis data, so that's what we'll play with. So let's just take a look at the two tables that I have in mind. So the first is ATP players. So I'll show you what the data looks like. Select star from ATP players. So there's just a list of player ID, their first and last name, right-handed or left-handed. DOB is date of birth, I guess. IOC, height, and I don't know what that is. Wiki data ID. And then the other table that I'll use to join IOC is the Olympics country code. So sometimes you might want to get the name. So I have a table called country names that we'll use. We'll join the two. So IOC, AFG is Afghanistan, ALB is Albania, and so on. So before we start writing queries, this is the order of execution in SQL. The first thing that happens is the froms and the joins get evaluated. So that fetches the tables necessary to render the results that you want rendered. On top of this, a where is applied, after which the group by, if you're grouping the data, is applied. Now, group filtering is done after the group by has been applied through the having clause, and only after this, the filtering of columns through the select happens. So at this point, you've got the data set that you need. After the raw data set has been obtained, if you want to remove duplicates, the distinct gets executed, and any ordering of the data, limiting of the data happens after that. So let me write some queries and you'll see what the kinds of things that sometimes confuse beginners, right? So suppose you wanted to list players and their IOC codes, but also wanted to get their country names. So, what's the standard way of doing this? So, select star, I'm calling the ATP players table AP, left outer join country names CN on CN dot, well, let's use using because the column is the same in both IOC. And you want everything from the ATP players table. And from CN, you want the country, I think it is, or perhaps it's a country name. I don't remember. Well, probably the country name because it gave me an error. Country names. Country names. Let's look at what the column's called. Country name. Yeah. So this should execute, and you've got the column names here. Now, if you now can I put a where condition after this? Suppose I wanted to look at only IOC where IOC is ECU. So can I do that? What do you think? Will this execute or no? So this should execute given that froms and joins happen first. That's retrieved through here, and only after that do you get to the where. So this should execute. So you get only rows for Ecuador. What will happen if I want to do the same thing and I put the where here? And just to make it unambiguous, let's do ap.ioc. Will this execute? And if you look at the sequence of execution, you know, where gets executed after the froms and joins. And here you have the join, which brings in the tables that you want to run this query on after the where. So if a new SQL programmer thinks that this condition will apply to ATP players and then join it against country names, that'll not work because all the joins get executed at the same time. So let's see. This will not work. There you go. The other common pitfall is, say you're using window functions. So you want to, you know, order by players from various countries, and the first player from a country gets a rank of 1, the second gets a rank of 2, and so on. So how would you do that? Over um, partition part, I can't spell clearly, partition by IOC, order by IOC. Let's call this column RN. What a lot of now let's execute this just to make sure the query runs. Yes, it does. And you can see this new column, so AFG Afghanistan has only one player, so one. AHO, I'm not sure what country that is. The country name is not even there. It has one player. Well, it has a few, so you get a sequence of numbers. Now, suppose I wanted to select only the first player from every country. And I think of doing this. Rn equals to 1. Would this work? Now, to answer that, I know the answer to the question, but to give you intuition behind this, let's look at the sequence of execution. Where does this column is something that is getting defined in the select. It's a column which you're selecting. And you're applying a filter to it. But what you're applying a filter to gets executed before the select is applied. You know? So when the where gets applied, this thing is not even defined. So this should not work. There you go. So the question becomes, how would you write a query like this? One approach is put this in a subselect, select star from as, say, ATP players temp, where now, in this case, this becomes the new table. This, and it already has this column. So with this as a sub-select, you can put the column here. This should work. Yes, it does. It pulls the first player from every single country. Okay, so I hope that makes the intuition clear because it's not always apparent to, especially to new SQL developers, why this works, but the earlier example that we saw doesn't. And if you want to see the earlier example, I'll recreate it for you. Um, get rid of this, get rid of this. This thing will not work. Again, this does not work because where gets executed before your select and the column that you're filtering on gets defined within the select. Here, the column gets defined within a subquery, which becomes like a table. So this subquery executes first, and the column's always already available, and hence you can add a filter here. Another quick thing that sometimes confuses new SQL developers is select star is how group by and having work. So suppose we wanted to count the number of players from individual countries. So count star IOC from ATP players. Let's run this. What do I do? Oh, group by IOC. Okay. Now, if I wanted to select only countries that have more than, say, 5 players, count, oops, star greater than 5. So this will work. This is fairly straightforward. Or if I wanted to say having IOC equal to, say, USA. This works too. However, would this work? Select count star where IOC in USA and say Mexico. I know the AOC code is, so you have a where and you have group by after that. A lot of new SQL developers have heard that where doesn't work with group by. But can you take a guess whether this will work or not? Let's look at the order of execution to understand this. I'll just cut paste the order of execution here. So it gets the from, and if there's no join here, and then the where gets executed, which is this, and the group by comes later. So there's no reason to think this will not execute. So it restricts the rows fetched to USA and Mexico and then does the grouping. Got it? Now, will this work? Answer is no, because you've already grouped the where. You know, there is no where applied to the rows that's fetched from the tables in this. So to get it to work with the group after the group by execution, you'll necessarily need to use the having clause. There you go. Okay, so hope that helped. Let me know in the comments if it's not clear, and I'm happy to post another video.